Hey, good morning,
Hey,
Simon.
Good morning. Hi.
How are you? Good morning for you. Good evening for us.
Uh, um, yeah, that was really strange. My phone, I was trying to get your meeting ID and it's just spinning. Oh, hang on. Where's the camera? Can
Uh,
you see me?
no, we cannot see you. We can hear you. Fine.
Okay,
The only thing you need to do is just in the meeting maker, just
got
double
it.
click the
Got it.
meeting ID. That's it. You don't need to enter anything else by default. It's
Yeah, but I was trying to get your information and it's just not loading on the iPhone, so I had to go online on the computer. But I'm on now.
okay. Let me see.
Very strange.
All right.
It's one of
Well,
those
man.
times. Me,
So
even my cappuccino milk wasn't quite right. It was, it was a little too bubbly and too liquidy. I didn't get that
yeah,
nice smooth foam to
yeah.
make the cappuccino. So.
Simon, I'm Claudio Bustamante calling you from Virginia. I was born in Santiago, Chile, and Uh, music and school brought me to United States. I ended up staying here. And then to your left there is Christian Landaeta. He's calling from Santiago, Chile.
Uh-huh.
And man, I think you guys were there with Toto several times. But you were, I think, in 204. Is that correct, Christian?
yeah, the song festival in Viña del Mar, Simon. That was the most amazing song we've ever heard, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes. That was a fun concert. That was really fun. Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So the way we want to do Simon in the radio, I record the audio, record the video, and then in a couple of weeks, we do one special about you, and then we very likely would put some of the stuff that you have done with protocol,
Right.
and then like a week after, we send an email to our fans and via social media, and
Hmm.
we end up broadcasting this interview and so on and so forth. So it's about the interview, all general questions about you, your life, thought, or whatever you want to share with us is it's great
Okay.
for. All right, so let me do a sort of formal introduction here. So good morning, Simon. My name is Claudia, and this is Christian joining us from Chile. From the studios in Fairfax City, we are very humble and grateful that Simon accepted our invitation to All About Music. Simon is by far one of the world's most renowned and respected drummer. Whether it's rock, fusion, or jazz, Simon applied the same precision and intensity to his drumming. He worked with rock band during the 70s and 80s and was the drummer for the band Toto from 1992 to 2014. Protocol is Simon band that he started in 1988. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
First question, how you end up moving what brought you to America? From,
Oh,
from England.
well, it was a dream I had from when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Um, all my favorite musicians were American musicians, all my favorite bands. Um, I had no idea the relationship of Los Angeles to New York City in those days. Could have been, on the same coast for all I knew. I was only 8 years old, didn't really have a good grasp of, the
Yeah.
world, and geography was not my greatest subject. Um, so growing up as a kid, I wanted to get to America, and I wanted to play with all these amazing bands and musicians. Um, and then somewhere along the way, I guess I kind of forgot about that because then I became a professional musician. I was always still wanting to get into that scene, that New York scene or that LA scene. Probably in those days, probably more the New York scene. Um, I was doing sessions in London, and I would listen to all the guys over in New York playing on all these different records, like Steve Gadd, Harvey Mason, Bernard Purdy, Grady Tate, and I'd really study how they were playing songs, how they were adapting to playing, Harvey Mason on a Quincy Jones album, uh, on a Grover Washington album, um, the same as Steve Gadd, Ricky Lee Jones album, and you know all the varied types of music that they all played, because that's what I was doing in London at the time, turning up to sessions, and from one session to another, I had no idea what kind of music was going to be. Sometimes I didn't know who the artist was. That's how it was in those days. And I learned a lot from those guys, listening to those guys. And then the first opportunity to actually go to the States and join an American band was in 1979 when I joined Stanley Clarke's band. And that was the first time I was the only teabag in the band, the only English guy. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And, you know, then the United States was a very different place. And it was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of, I don't know, there was a lot of excitement there, you know. In those days, touring the States was much better than touring Europe. It's now the opposite. But, well, up until this year. So I had an opportunity of maybe moving to the States at the end of '79. But the thing is, I was established in London at that time. So I felt it was probably better to stay there. But 10 years later, well, 12 years later, it was time for me to move. I needed a new challenge.
Yeah. Thank you. My understanding is that you started to play right-handed, and then as your drum kit grew, you end up decided to start playing left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that's a challenge. How you end up doing that? What was the reason of doing that?
Well, first of all, 18 years old, you could do anything. You know, it's a great time to learn, to change your technique, to do all sorts of things. I was looking. You have to understand at that point, I had just come out of being a jazz drummer, a Dixieland drummer, and going into playing rock and roll. And a lot of the sessions I was doing at that time was a mixture of jingles, film dates, and then music dates, you know, records. So there was a pretty wide range of styles there. I wanted to try to sound different. I didn't particularly like the sound, the way that recording had gone with drums. So I was always looking for something new. And then when I went to see Billy Cobham for the first time, and I saw that he was playing lefty, I just went, wow. I was 17, and I said, that looks so cool. I didn't care about, you know, I mean, I loved the way it sounded, but to me, it looked cool. So that was the reason. I wanted to look cool, play differently. And of course, it did really open up the possibilities of playing a large drum kit. Ergonomically, it was much easier. It changed my sound. It changed the way I would phrase certain things. It's kind of tricky to do very traditional drum fills when you play left-handed, because things fall differently. And I like that. I like the fact that things were now a little bit different, you know. So that was it. I just wanted to be very individual, very different, and it stuck.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Phillips. An honor to be here talking to you, Claudio. I'd like to know, go back a little further, and maybe you have some nice memories of the times when you began in jazz, I think, with your dad,
Mm-hmm.
whom I understand used to play the clarinet, and then he also took you to the recording studio.
Yeah.
Any special memories from those days?
Oh, many, yeah. Well, I basically grew up in a studio. I was dragged along to recording sessions, which were basically broadcasts. They were all done at the BBC, at various BBC studios around London. I was 5 years old, 6 years old, and I'd be dragged around. And I was told to sit in a chair behind the drummer and shut up. Don't make a sound. I learned about studio etiquette very early on, and I understood what a microphone was and the way that a session is conducted. Now, in those days, you got to remember it was a 9-piece Dixieland band. So it's kind of in between Dixieland and a medium-sized dance band. Everybody wore a suit and tie. The control room was tiny. It was mono. There was only one speaker cabinet in the corner, which was a Tannoy Lockwood. It was a 1/4-inch tape machine, full track, and a small console with very big knobs on it. And the only people allowed inside the control room were the engineer, the assistant, the producer, and then only my father, who was the band leader, the trumpet player, and if there was a singer, the singer. Every other musician was actually not allowed in the control room in those days. We had to kind of stand outside with the door open to listen to the playback. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
And yeah, so I really got a taste of how a studio works from the point of view of the studio etiquette, and the fact that we had a 3-hour session. The first hour was a rehearsal, 12 songs, and then a tea break, and then about an hour and a half, all those 12 songs were recorded. 1 take each, maybe two takes. There is no room for any mistakes. It's pretty tough those days, you know. And when I was 13, I'd been playing with my dad for just about a year. And I think it was a Saturday actually, the drummer that was supposed to do the session had somehow got himself double booked or something happened, and he couldn't make the session. And my dad called a few other leading London session guys. Everybody was busy. And he said, "You're doing the session today." Now, at that point, my drum kit was in bits. I was doing a little yearly clean of my drum kit. So I had to rapidly put it back together and get it all packed up. And yeah, that was my first recording session. And by the way, we didn't used to wear headphones in those days. We still just played as a band in the room, and the microphones were kind of just placed around, you know. It's pretty amazing.
Tannoy was, a big name, so you had really excellent material in the studio where you were.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was a pretty worrying day, and also my dad had chosen all the material for that session, which included some arrangements I had never played before. So I was sight reading, and I was struggling. So he actually called my mum from the studio and said, "Bring the dance pads," which means the music that we play on the dances, which I've been playing for a year. And by the time she arrived, he was able to just grab a few songs out of there, which were songs I had at least played, because that was pretty tough to sight read songs I'd never heard or played before. Tough arrangements. And I was 13 years old. And the producer wasn't very helpful, by the way. So it was interesting, but managed to get through it. And that was the start of my recording career.
Like some nervous fun, you would say? Some nervous fun, some nervous learning?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was in at the deep end, that was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to jump now, Simon, to something I had left for the end of the interview, but I was thinking of your drumming versus engineering and producing that you've been doing. Maybe those were the days when you were attracted, because miking drums is very complex too. So maybe that's when you began thinking about this, like developing ideas?
No, no, it wasn't from that point of view. I grew up with a tape machine. My mom was a very keen amateur recordist. She taught me how to operate her first tape machine, which was a ferrograph, from when I was like 3 years old. I mean, she showed me how to spool up tape, not to twist it, what happens when you twist it, and play the back of it, and definitely do not press the red button. So I had grown up around a tape machine that she was operating all the time, and I remember sitting on it was on a kind of high bench. She'd put me up there, and I'd sit next to it and just watch the reels go round and hear music coming out of the speakers. It was great. She then upgraded her system. She got 2 Revox G36s, a beautiful Radford tube amp, some nice speakers, and every broadcast that my dad used to do, he would take a dub of it. That means at the end of the session, the engineer would go, the master tape that we had just recorded, he would bounce that to another reel of tape and give that to my dad or mom. And she needed a semi-professional machine because she needed to be able to play the large 10-inch reels, 10 1/4-inch reels, metal reels. So that's why she got into that. So suddenly we had the makings of a simple studio at home. And by that time, I was now messing around with these 2 tape recorders, bouncing from one to the other, adding another instrument, you know. I was fascinated because I loved the sound of records. And I was saying this recently, actually, on another interview. I would sometimes buy a record just purely because of the sound, you know, not so much because of the music. I went out to buy a Shirley Bassey album. Now, that at my age then, I wasn't a big Shirley Bassey fan, although she was huge in those days. You know, she did the James Bond, a couple of James Bond themes, and you know. But the sound on this particular record, I heard it by accident in a electric store, I think, electronic store. It was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so I listened to the music from a sonic point of view. I remember a drummer who used to live very close to where we lived. He played me a Quincy Jones album, which Phil Ramone engineered. And many years later, I ended up working with Phil. And that sounded amazing. So that's really how I got into wanting to be on the other side of the glass. It was to create sounds, not just on drums, on everything, you know.
What about this coming back to vinyl, Simon? What do you think? Because it's crazy, you know. Most of us had sold the collections, and many people now are crying about that. But
Yeah.
now it's like they are worshiping vinyl again, and it's really different. And for me, it's like for yourself, the open reel thing is fantastic. I love open reel and watching it. Just maybe if there's no sound, I just love watching it. And yeah, same goes for vinyl. Same goes for vinyl. What do you think about vinyl?
You know, it's interesting because I've seen development from mono, full track, all the way through to where we are now. I've recorded on every single format you could imagine. I've engineered on pretty much most formats. I never engineered any mono sessions. We were all stereo by then. And actually, by the time I was engineering, we were all using 24-track machines. So I grew up, I started engineering with with 23 available tracks because one track was used for time code. I didn't experiment. I had a vinyl, Protocol 2 and Protocol 3 were both mastered for vinyl as well, and they were produced. And during protocol rehearsals at my studio, I set up a CD player and an amp and a turntable and a pair of speakers in the room we were rehearsing. And I had the CD and I had the vinyl. And I tried to sync them up the best I could. And I played it to the whole band And the only thing I had to do was, the vinyl's obviously much quieter, was switch to the turntable and turn the gain up and then back down. Unanimously, everybody just said, oh, the vinyl. Now, when I master, I'm usually record at 96K sample rate, PCM. And I've been used to hearing 96, 24, you know, sound, production, reproduction. When I go to the mastering room, and then I hear for the first time 44.1, 16-bit, Red Book for CDs, I go, oh, it's just so disappointing. It really is. So the great thing about listening to the vinyl version is you're actually getting the 96K masters that I mixed, which have then been mastered for vinyl. So it's beautiful, you know. And I wouldn't, you mentioned something very interesting. You said everybody got rid of their vinyl. I wouldn't worry too much about that, because most of that vinyl was really bad in those days when we were buying towards the, well, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Record companies were producing vinyl, really cheap vinyl, thin. They were, a lot of them were warped. They weren't very good. The great thing about now is most vinyl production is on 180, 190 gram vinyl. So if you just can get the reissues of all the albums that you loved, they're going to be much better anyway. So, and when I move into my house, when it's all finished, I'm going to treat myself to a beautiful turntable, because, you know, all my stuff went, it was all destroyed, you know, in the fire. I'm going to treat myself to a lovely turntable, a lovely amplifier, and I've already got nice speakers, and go out and order some beautiful vinyl of my favorite records.
Great. You just mentioned, I wasn't sure if I should go there, but you just mentioned it. How was it like beginning again after the terrible fire? I cannot even imagine something like it. So how do you rebuild yourself in every sense, emotionally, you know, professionally? Yeah.
It's yeah, I mean, it's a big change of life. At first, I mean, when I heard about it, I was actually in New York City. We had just played our first show of a US tour after a 6-week European tour. And this was with Protocol 4, with Greg Howe, Otmaro Ruiz, and Ernest Tibbs. And we'd had a beautiful tour. But we played our first show in New York, and we had been on the road for 6 weeks, so we were tight. And the audience was fantastic. It was pretty much sold out. And that night, this all happened. Well, at first, you don't really know what to think. Somebody, you know, I received a call and who said, hate to tell you, but everything's gone. Then the next scenario was, sorry, there's a few cars going up and down here. Didn't think it would be this busy. The next scenario was get everybody, well, postpone the tour, cancel the tour, and book flights and get everybody back home, myself included. And but of course I couldn't get up to see my house or what was left of it, because everything was shut. I mean, the fire was still raging, acres and acres, and moving at a speed of an acre a minute or something ridiculous. It was yeah, it was very frightening for the people that were here. I didn't get to see it. I mean, I saw it from the plane, and I saw the aftermath, but I didn't see the conflagration that was happening in here in Ojai. I think it was about a week later they opened the roads up, and I drove up there and saw it. I mean, the smell, the air, ash, and everything. You have to wear a mask, and you have to cover your arms and everything. It was really devastating. It was. I mean, I've never been in a war zone, but it looked like I would imagine a war zone was. it looked like a missile had just come in and just obliterated the whole. You know, there wasn't one thing standing. The stove, fridge, just burnt out wreck of a car, and it's really hard to know kind of what to think. You know, the funny thing is you have this automatic sense of there's got to be something left. And you look through, and you have to be very careful. Obviously, there's a lot of nails, screws, bits of metal that were in the building, and everything is, you know, anything that's crockery is all in shattered in little bits underneath. You know, you just think you're going to find something that survived. And the funny thing was, I did find one thing, and it was quite staggering. It was a cappuccino cup, just like that, which I brought back from the Tokyo Blue Note, and it had Blue Note Tokyo written on it, and even the handle was intact. And how it survived, I don't know, because anything that was up on a shelf in a kitchen would have had to have fallen at least 4 or 5 feet, because as the, you know, as all the wood melts, and, you know, as all the wood burns, everything falls down and then just piles up. But somehow it was shielded by something else, purely by chance, and the cup was intact. But that's the only thing.
A spark of hope, perhaps.
Huh?
A spark of hope, I say.
A spark of hope. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then of course began the long, you know, what do you do? You know, if you've never experienced this before, you're not even sure, what do you do? Well, I better ring the bank, you know, you've got a mortgage on the house, insurance company, and then of course, then the fun and games start, and it's been nearly a 3-year battle. Finally, the insurance paid out. They tried to, you know, they tried not to. They tried to pay half. But the house is going up. It's about 80% done. I was hoping to be in there by Christmas. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but I'll be in there in the next, you know, 2 or 3 months. Hopefully, I should be walking into my rebuilt house, I hope.
Right.
Yeah. But even if the insurance company were to cover X amount of dollars, and still there's pictures and memories for you when you were a kid, I suppose,
Yeah.
with your mom, with your dad, and
Oh yeah.
master machine stuff that was important to you, that
Yeah.
it has, for a bank, no monetary value. For you, it means everything, right? So it's
Photos, like, you know, all my photo boxes, which were, you know, before digital. It's funny, I had a bunch of photos which I was going to scan before the tour, before I left on tour, and they were sitting in the top drawer of my office, but I never got to them. And letters, I had a couple of beautiful letters which I'd kept. One from Mick Jagger, one from Jimmy Page, one from a couple from Pete Townsend, actually. They've gone. Recordings on like 1/4-inch reels of priceless stuff that was never released, rough mixes of albums that never, you know, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, I'm not the only one. There's, you know, over 1,000 people that lost their house and their possessions and have been doing it ever since the year later, 2018, 2019, and this year. It's devastating. And then, of course, let's not forget all the people around the world that are in war zones, have had to do this over and over again. I mean, it really does give you a little bit of a concept of, you know, that some people in the world really, you know, do suffer at the hands of militarism and people's ideals and politics. It's one thing to lose your home and, you know, and all your possessions. It's another thing to lose lives. and to have people shooting at you and firing missiles at you and terrorist bombs and stuff. So it kind of gives you a tiny little idea of what that's like, except I don't think you can ever have an idea unless you live, you know, unfortunately happen to be in one of those places. So, you know, it's part of living on Earth, isn't it? It's part of life.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Did the cappuccino machine survive?
Sorry?
Did your cappuccino machines
Ah,
survive? I
now,
heard that
funnily
somewhere.
no, it didn't survive, but it's made out of very heavy steel. It's a Spanish model called Expo Bar. It's a manual, well, semi-automatic machine. It was still in one piece, but of course what is it called? Oh gosh, I've forgotten the name of it. The thing that you put the basket in, not the regulator. Anyway, that was cast, so that melted.
Yeah.
But the steel part was there. But funny you should mention that. The first thing, once I found a place to rent, one of the first things I bought was another cappuccino machine. And that's the one I have here.
All right. All right.
Very important to me.
Yeah, and you're, you know, I suppose that being an Englishman, you still like tea, or you switch completely to coffee, or you do both. Or...
You know, I love a good cup of tea, you know, especially when I'm working in the studio, old habits. I tend to only drink nowadays coffee in the morning. You know, I think when you're younger, you can handle all the caffeine and everything, but when you get older, it's a little hard to sleep sometimes. So I'm careful, you know.
I got you. I got you.
It's a ritual for me every morning. Yeah.
Let me take you back to 1992.
Mhm.
How did you decided to join Toto back then in '92? I think I heard somewhere you went home and all of a sudden you got a phone call and you say, what's this all about? Go ahead.
Well, okay, so I had been planning a move to Los Angeles for about 2 years. And it's quite difficult to do it on your own. If you're with a band that has a record company, or if you're an artist that's signed to a publishing company, then that's fine. They can do all the application for you to get your work permit, because a work permit only allows you to work for one corporation in the States. But that's not my situation. I've got to be able to work for any of the record companies as a studio musician, you know? So it took a while for my New York lawyer to figure out a way. Eventually figured out a way to do it, and I got my visa, I got all my paperwork together, and I was done. I was ready. And it was a question, right, when am I going to leave? And I thought, well, I'll wait until the summer's over in '92, and maybe I'll go in around October and move. Well, didn't quite work like that, because suddenly, um, well, I heard that Jeff Porcaro had passed away. And a week later, I got a phone call from Steve Lukather. And I just thought because I knew Steve a little bit then, I just thought he wanted to talk to me, you know, just have a chat and, you know, talk about Jeff. Or I didn't realize he was going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to get straight to the point. And he told me, we have a tour booked, 42 shows all over the world. We've got 40 people on the payroll. We've got a brand new album coming out. What do we do? And they were having a meeting at Fitzgerald Hartley, which was the office, you know, the management company. And he said, would you come play with us? And that was just like, huh? Really? Toto? Because at that time, Toto was way off my radar. Mainly because I was doing more work in the States, and Toto wasn't doing anything in the States then. They were working more in Europe. And I kind of lost touch. I didn't know what they were up to. And that was kind of basically it. They sent me a DAT, because the record hadn't been finished yet. They sent me a DAT tape of the new record, all the mixes. And I listened. I went, wow, this is not the Toto I remember. It was a little tougher, a little more heavy rock. Luke was now the singer. And I thought it was great. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. The record was lovely. Jeff sounded great on it. That was it. So that's how that happened.
Yeah. Well, later on, I will ask you about how, what happened in 214 at the end of
Yep.
22 years. It's 22 years, more than a marriage that the
Yep.
majority of folks.
Well, it is a marriage of sorts.
Yeah,
It's a marriage to 4 other men.
that's right. Yeah, man, I was looking at the list of everything you have toured with and then play with, and how it's like to play with Jeff Beck, Peter Gabriel, Tears for Fears, and so on and so forth, man. You are so humble and so famous, man.
Um, well, obviously there are certain artists who you're a fan of,
Yeah,
and certain artists that you're not a fan of, yet suddenly you've got a call to play with so and so, you know? Um, Now you have to be a professional and you have to put that aside. And it's funny how, especially with the artists that I was kind of ambivalent to, wasn't like a big fan of, then all of a sudden I'm doing a record with them. And then I learn actually, wow, they're really good. They're really talented and the music's great. And it's a very nice surprise. It's off your radar. So it's not somebody that maybe you would normally listen to. But that's the whole thing about being a studio musician or a freelance musician and playing with all these different artists. The pivotal artists, I think, were Jack Bruce. Jack taught me so much, and we did a lot of touring. We did a lot of dates. We did 2 albums together. Loved playing with Jack. Loved his music. Incredible singer, incredible player, and incredible composer. Then it was Stanley Clarke and Jeff Beck together, actually. Jeff, wow, was always a big Jeff Beck fan and always wanted to play with him. And then finally, this is it. And also Stanley Clarke too, was always a huge fan of Stanley. And those were actually 2 people I was listening to their records going, oh, I want to play with these guys, So it's very exciting when that does happen. Peter Gabriel, wow, that was, huge fan of Peter Gabriel's. And then all of a sudden I get a call to do a session. And Peter's very interesting. I met Peter first. The first time I met Peter was in 1976 at Morgan Studios, and Bob Ezrin was producing. And I was doing a session in they had 4 studios in those days. I was doing a session in one, and they were doing a session over in Studio 3. And I was outside, just outside the front door, and Bob Ezrin and Peter Gabriel, they came out of because a lot of studios had bars then. It was great, a bar and even a little restaurant. It was fantastic. And Bob came up to me and said, he knew who I was. And, said, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I went, wow, he introduced me to Peter. And I went, oh, lovely, and I went, wow. So we met. And then that was in 76. Fast forward to 80, I want to say 82 or 83 when I played with Peter. I had no idea. I just thought he would never remember that meeting. And I was in this studio called Ridge Farm. It was a residential studio. I was in the dining room having a cup of coffee or something. And Peter comes in. And I turn around and say, oh, hi, Peter, I'm Simon. He said, yes, I know. We met at Morgan Studios with Bob Ezrin. He remembered exactly. Isn't that amazing? And every time I've met Peter, he's always new. Always, oh, yeah, very, very, he's very, very quiet, very polite, lovely man. Absolutely. But that was amazing. The fact that he remembered. I mean,
yeah.
So, yeah, it was great.
Wow.
Okay, Simon, my turn now. I'm a big fan of Genesis in the Gabriel era, especially now that you mention him, and I like some of the solo albums by the Genesis members too. I would like to mention now 2 people you work with. Maybe you have some nice memories. Mike Rutherford, the first album by Mike Rutherford, and then Mike Oldfield, which I admire too a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. You have any special memories about those 2 people?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you a little side story to that. In 1976, was at the Manor Studios. We were just wrapping up recording House Tricks with Jack Bruce, and I got a call from Phil Collins. And Phil asked me if I want to join Genesis.
Oh, we
I went,
know that.
wow, okay. And I said, Phil, now, but I have to proceed this by, I wasn't a huge Genesis fan at that time. I became a big fan after, but funny enough, at that time, 76, it wasn't really quite what I was into at the time, but very honored to be asked, but I had to decline because I had just signed a recording contract with Robert Stigwood with the Jack Bruce band. So we were actually a band, and we were going to go out on the road the next year. So I was actually already committed. And I said, but Phil, thank you for asking. He said, well, listen, how about would you fill in for me for Brand X while I rehearse with Genesis in January? And I went, absolutely, because I knew the guys from Brand X. So we were rehearsing in this place called the Farmyard, just outside of London, owned by Trevor Murray, who used to be the drummer of the Peddlers. And I was in one room with my Ludwig Octopus kit playing with Brand X. Genesis were in the other room with Chester Thompson, because after he called me, he then called Chester, with his Octopus, his Ludwig Octopus, and Phil's Gretsch kit, and that was it. Two of Phil's bands were playing simultaneously, different music, of course, you know. So that was the little connection with Genesis, and actually I was invited to their first show in London with Chester, so that was great. Now back in those days, Steve Hackett was still playing in the band too, you know. And then that was 70, okay, so 76, 77, they went out on that tour. And then in end of 78, I got contacted by Mike Rutherford and went down to his house and met him, hung out, listened to the music. And then we recorded Small Creeps Day in Polar in Stockholm in around, I want to say April or May of 79. And wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Really enjoyed that. It was a great album.
You didn't go on tour with Mike, did you?
No.
Okay.
I was always, it's funny, I always seem to have been, well, at that point, I was touring with Jeff Beck and Stanley Clarke, so wasn't able to do any. I don't think he went out on the road with his own project until a few years later, though. Mike and the Mechanics. I think that was much later.
It might be curious to you. We just had a conversation last week with Steve Hackett, who's a very nice, interesting man. He's very he's very outgoing. He has so many stories to tell. And we're eventually going to have a conversation with Anthony Phillips with that, which is quite unusual to have the chance to reach the guy, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely
lovely man. We had a lot of fun on that record, and of course I worked with Anthony again with a band called Camel. So he was involved with that probably about a year later. A couple of years later. I think that was 83. Yeah.
Yeah, we did have the chance to see Camel here live in Chile. Very rare occasion with Andy Latimer. Yeah, they are such a great band too. Yeah. And what about Mr. Mike Oldfield, Simon?
Right. So now Mike, he had been trying to get me to play on something for about a year, and I remember a call I had with Richard Branson, who thought that, well, if I call him, he'll do the session. So I was at Nomis Rehearsal Studios, probably rehearsing with Jeff Beck, actually, it would have been. And I was leaving for the States like the next day or something. And Richard was on the phone and said, can you come and do a session with Mike Oldfield on Saturday, whatever it was? I said, Richard, I'd love to. And it's, very, thank you for calling me, but I'm going to be in the US. I'm leaving tomorrow. And he said, well, can't you leave later? I said, no. So funny, So that was the beginning of that. And then about a year later, I met Mike actually in New York City. I was playing with Al Di Meola in 1982. And then eventually we managed to get together for an album called Crises, which I started playing drums on. But he noticed that I was very, let's say, studio friendly and equipment friendly, and worked great with his engineer, and they got a great sound. And that was really the first time that I was given a chance to become an engineer. It was all Mike. It was Mike's fault, really. And what he did was we had a phone conversation after I'd recorded all the music. And he called me. He said, "So what are you up to?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing a bit of this, bit of that. I'm actually producing an artist at the moment." He said, "Oh," he says, you produce?" I said, "Well, I'm starting to produce. It's something I really want to do." He said, "How would you like to produce me?" And I went, wow. Okay. He said, "Right. And let's do a trial week." So a week later, I drove down there, and I was staying in a hotel because I lived outside of London back then, and we started working together. I got an engineer from Air Studios because he has a Neve 8108, and so I needed somebody who was used to working on Neve consoles. We did one day, and that went okay. And then the next day I turned up, no engineer. And I said, "Where's so-and-so?" I don't remember. It might have been Colin, actually. "Where is Colin?" He said, "Oh, I fired him." Oh. And then he walked out the room, came back with the Neve manual, which is about 6 inches thick, plonked it on the desk and said, "I'll be back in 3 hours." So I opened and I started reading the Neve manual. And he came back in 3 hours, and I was going, "Oh no, this is," I mean, it's always something I've wanted to do. And I had a pretty good idea of signal flow. I know what happens from the microphone, but operating stuff like that is a whole different thing. And he said, "Right, let's do some acoustic guitar." He goes out into the live room, puts his headphones on, and he's got a mic all set up, ready to go. And I mean, I barely even know how to unmute the monitors, you know. As I turn those up, I'm looking for something that moves, anything that moves, a meter. And I see a compressor. It's a Uri 1176, and it's doing this. Well, it can only do that if it's getting signal. And I thought, there it is. And I look at the number on it. I go, right. I go up to the patch bay, and right, here we go. All dynamics, all the compressors, you know, noise gates. Right, 1, 2, 3. That must be it. And I see that it's already patched up, and I'm following it. Oh, it's coming into channel 18. I don't know if it was channel 18. I'm just picking. And oh, right, okay. And then I have to route. That was a digital routing console, which, you know, not many people had seen in those days. But he'd already given me kind of a rough guide, and eventually managed to do that. Got to the tape machine, armed the track, and all of a sudden, bling, there's a guitar, and I see a meter moving. Wow. Talk back. "Mike, yes, have you got sound yet?" I said, yeah, it's all happening. He said, "How's your headphones?" I said, "Yeah, okay, run the tape."
Wow.
I mean, it was baptism by fire. And but you know, I have to give him credit to just thank you, Mike, for giving me that opportunity. He knew. He always preferred to have a musician engineering, because he I don't know, it's just I think he feels more comfortable. He's often engineered most of his own albums, but he just wanted to get away from it. He's done it so many times, or so he'd done it so much, he wanted somebody else. Now he found somebody who he thought might be just the right kind of match, and that was it. I did the week, and then I was invited back, and we worked for the next 2 months, finishing off Crises.
Fantastic.
So that was Mike Oldfield. I have a lot to thank him for. Plus, we went on the road. We performed. We did the Crisis album. We did another album with him, Discovery. We did all. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful apprenticeship. Really was absolutely great.
Now, one more thing, Simon. You mentioned several influences among drummers. You usually mention Steve Gadd, Ian Pace, Tony Williams. Is there any of them that has you feel a particular where you got a particular learning, or because they are so different?
Oh, I learned from everybody I listened to. Everybody. I stole everything. That's how I learned. I copied everything. And by the way, I apply exactly the same to engineering too. I stole everything from all the engineers I work with. And still use certain techniques of certain engineers. Ken Scott, for example, Eddie Kramer. I've stolen a lot from those two guys. Elliot Shiner, I learned a lot from. But drummers, yeah, I mean, all of them. You learn from everyone. Even some of the drummers I don't even know, but played on albums. I remember, and I keep forgetting his name. I wish I could remember his name. The Billy Paul album with Me and Mrs. Jones. I used to play along to that album, and as a kid, trying to play that slow groove, kind of 6/8 groove, was one of the most difficult things to do. But I love that record. I love the sound of it. The sound of Billy Paul's voice was amazing. I can even remember the echo on it right now, the reverb and the pre-delay and everything. Little did I know that Anthony Jackson was playing on that record, and of course I've done a lot of different records with Anthony, and the drummer Norman Farrington, that's his name.
Yeah.
He ended up playing. He actually played with John Luponti too. But what a beautiful groove that was, and incredibly difficult to play as a young man. It's so slow, you just can't play that slow, you know. But it really taught me how to play certain grooves, certain tempos, and it's the same with all those guys, you know. Chris Parker, you know, yeah, it's great. And then, of course, many years later, I meet them all and hang out with them, and that's just amazing. You know, I had Harvey Mason. He came to my studio to record one track on my drum kit because he loved the sound and he wanted it for this one particular song. He wanted to play my kit, and I was like, "Wow, this is so cool!" And we had a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. We talked most of the time, but he went in and he played the kit pretty much as it was. He had to put a ride song on the right-hand side, of course, but he put the hi-hat up a little bit. But basically, he's playing my drums and I'm engineering. You know, it was really bizarre, but actually great. And he told me a great story that he was in New York City and he was talking to Steve Gadd and he was just starting off. And Steve Gadd said, you know, I think you should go to Los Angeles. You'll do really well over there. In other words, I'm the New York guy. You go over there. So Harvey he went over to LA and became, you know, LA's, you know, first call drummer. You know, it was amazing. As well as Jim Keltner and Jeff Porcaro and all the other great drummers, Ed Green, you know.
Now, maybe you remember, Simon, October 2016, there was a show that was canceled that was going to take place with Hiromi Uehara and with you and Anthony Jackson. And she came by herself in the end. I don't know if you remember what happened that time. You were coming to play in Santiago.
I know. That was a very sad, very, very sad time, actually. Within the space of just a couple of weeks, Hiromi lost a band. I got sick. And Anthony got sick. There is a kind of comical side to this. We're playing this ridiculous music, high energy music, and then turning up at the airport with 2 wheelchairs, one for me, one for Anthony. And Hiromi's pushing Anthony, and Mario, our sound engineer, is pushing me. And we're flying to the next gig and we're both really not doing well at all. But, you know, we get on the plane and we get to the next place and we have 2 wheelchairs at the other end and get us into a car, get us into the hotel. And I go to bed for a bit and then get up and have to do the gig. And it was, yeah, I was in a lot of pain. I just had to get up onto the drum kit and stay there. And we had to shorten the set a little bit. I mean, I just couldn't, you know. But we did it. We both played. But it got to a stage where we couldn't continue. I actually had to go into hospital. And then Anthony was taken to hospital in Italy as well. So sadly, we had to cancel the last 2 shows of the European tour and thereafter our South American trip. And it was a real shame because I was so looking forward to coming down to Chile again. Yeah, it was a great shame. And actually that was the end of the trio with Anthony. We did do a few shows after that with Jimmy Johnson playing bass, and also with Hadrian Farode. And they were great. They were fantastic. But of course, it wasn't the trio. You know, Hiromi wrote that music for Anthony and myself. So it was very, very sad. But I will say, because I think people might be wanting to know, Anthony is doing very well.
Yeah.
He's in assisted living, so he's getting really well taken care of. And I spoke to him not too long ago and on Zoom, and he looked great. He was in great spirits, laughing, and he's playing his bass. So I'm really hoping that he's gonna be able to come out and play again. I really do. It was a beautiful adventure that was.
Simon, let me. How much time do we have? I mean, we can go for. You have another 10 minutes or so? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
10-15
yeah.
will be fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I was thinking about what you say about all the people that you have played and all the adventures you have and memories. Do you have like an autobiography? Have you? I mean, that need to be captured somewhere, man. I mean, you were.
I started writing it over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when I was on the road with Toto, because we would be traveling many hours by bus all over Europe. And I just thought I need to do something with this time. I'm so fed up of watching movies on the bus. And so I started writing. I stopped, but I'm back to archiving. Well, see, now the problem is, here's the problem. Some of my diaries survived because my partner at the time was able to grab a few things, but a lot of the stuff has gone. So I'm having to delve into my computer to try to piece together using just various documents that I've had on the computer since I had a Mac, which was when I moved to the States. So since '93, really. And I'm trying to piece together all of my sessions, all of my tours and clinics. And at the moment, I'm up to 1996. Now, there's a few question marks in there because, you know, some of the stuff I just didn't write down, but I've got most of it. So that's helping me recall memories and scenarios and stories. So I have started, but it's a big work. It's a big work, but it's, yeah, I'm already doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm great that you can recollect all the stuff, and I hoping that you can find all these records, pictures, and on that computer or others. And I'm quite sure, you know,
it's
in the fire you lost a lot of stuff. So.
Well, see, people have been fantastic. People are sending me stuff from all over the world, pictures that I didn't even know existed, just all sorts of things. People have already sent me records, you know, vinyl records, or, you know, so I've got, you know, some little bits and pieces. So I'm kind of gaining information that way, you know. And of course, the internet's an amazing thing. I'm finding out about gigs that were played. I didn't know the dates of, and you go online, you put the name of the band in, and you go, oh wow, there's our tour dates. You know, it's great. Now I've got those, so that's really what it is. You know.
Gotcha. After, in 2014, after doing your own thing and playing with Toto, 22 years or so, I'm quite sure within this 22 years, there were new members. Unfortunately, people have died, new members that you may get along well, or you didn't get along. When you signed in 1992 with Toto, it's one type of music, one type of band, and in 2014 was something very different, right?
Yes.
You it's not that one day you decide, right? You reach a point where you say, man, this is not working out, and you decided, well, I'm producer thing, I'm doing the stuff for other people, I want to play with other people, I cannot want to roll that off, and I want to do my own stuff. It was a combination of all this reason that in 2014 you decided, well, I'm done here.
Yeah, well, obviously, you stay in a band long enough, you're going to go through a lot of changes, personnel changes.
Yeah.
We're all getting older. We know each other very well, and there are bones of contentions. There's disagreements. Like you're running a business together, really. It becomes more about running the business than actually playing the music. Frankly, Toto really stopped in 2008. And then we had a break, and then David Page and Steve Lukather decided, let's put together a band to do some short tours to help Mike Porcaro out, who was having a really rough time, which we did. But it was totally different, and the vibe had changed. It was a bit strange, frankly, because I'd put a lot into those years, not only as a drummer, but as a co-writer, co-producer. I was engineering the albums. I mean, there was an awful lot of involvement, and then suddenly it's a band that I'm almost in, that I feel like I'm a backing musician in. Yeah, it was a weird time, and that's when I felt, I think this is it. I think it's time to move on, because to me it wasn't Toto anymore, not the Toto that I joined, definitely. And it's probably the same for Luke as well. When he looked around the stage in 2008, he said, not that he doesn't recognize anybody, but these are not the people I grew up with. And Toto was always very much a neighborhood band. They went to school together. They were a garage band, so, and that was missing for him. And I totally understand that, So, and we were having a lot of differences at the time. So I felt, yeah, it was now time to move on. It was, being in a band, there's a lot of commitment, and it stops you doing other things. I was running a commercial studio and really trying to make that work. Very difficult when I kept having to leave to go on tour. Plus the Hiromi project had started, which was just wonderful, and it was a breath of fresh air, and I wanted to be able to concentrate on that. So that was it. I just said, you know what, I think it's time.
Yeah. Wow. By the way, I email Steve Lukather as well, and hopefully he will reply back, and we would love to have him on here in this show as well.
Great.
You still talk to him? You guys get along well, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we spoke actually not long ago, and we had a great chat. No, it's all good. It's all good. I spoke to Steve Porcaro just recently. I did a track on Joseph Williams' new album, and David Page and we exchange little texts occasionally. I usually bump into him at a concert somewhere. So no, we have a lot of history. A lot of history.
Yeah. Wow. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay, thank you for the time, Simon. I'd like to have some recollection on your part about 801 Live. Remember, with the Phil Manzanera and Brian Eno, long time ago.
Yep. It's so funny because I was looking at those dates 1976 in my diaries, because that is a diary I do have. 1976 was probably my busiest studio year. I have 3 pages of sessions. It's stunning. I didn't even count them up, but it's 100 over. It's a couple of hundred. So that was a very busy year, yet managed to find time to rehearse with the band for on and off for a couple of months. And then we only ever played 3 shows. We played the Pavilion West Ronton Chroma in East Anglia. We played Reading Festival, Jazz and Blues Festival, and we played the Queen Elizabeth Hall in London, and that's where 801 Live was recorded. And that was it. We never played again. It was a shame.
Yeah, wow.
Special because you sometimes get into adventures with people you never thought you would, and then in other cases that you might even like a musician, you never do anything again with them. It's like
exactly, yeah. It was a one-off thing. We Phil wanted to. I remember when I just moved to the States, we had spoken, and he said, "I want to do 801 Cuba." He wanted to take 801 to Cuba, and I said, "Count me in. I'd love to do that," but it just didn't come together, sadly.
Now about Derek Sherinian, you've been working with. I think he's made some amazing music.
Yeah.
Protocol. Those are 2 names I'd like you to expand on a little bit. Derek Sherinian and Protocol.
Well, Derek, we have just released a new record, and it's called The Phoenix, and it's receiving rave reviews. Derek and I have a wonderful chemistry. We hadn't actually written music for about 9 years, and he called me up last year, and he said, "I'm going to do a solo album." He said, "Would you be up for doing it? I want you to co-write it, play, engineer, mix the record." And I went, "Why not? Let's do it." And I said, "Let's get together and let's see what happens." And you know, it was funny. We were so productive that day. We just have a great chemistry when it comes to music. I don't know what it is. It's just we work great together as co-composers. So it's a wonderful marriage, actually, from that point of view. And then I went into the local studio here, recorded all my tracks, then sent him on his way with all the sessions, sent them to all the various different musicians, because obviously we're all in lockdown. We're having to record separately, so everybody's engineering their own tracks, and then they send it back to me, and then I mix the record, and we finished it. I think it turned out really well, and I think people are going to really like it.
Yeah, for some snippets I've seen on the internet, it's absolutely amazing. It's so powerful. It's such a tight sound. It's really amazing. Yeah.
I went for a very even though it's all recorded digitally, it still has quite an analog sound to it. But that's just the way I am. I grew up engineering with a tape machine. So it's just, I don't know what it is. It's just the way you hear things, and it's the perspective you put them in. And but it's it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty thick, analog-y sounding record.
It is. And what about Sorry. Go ahead.
Getting the vinyl version.
Me too. Yeah. And what about Protocol? I was also amazed. I have to confess that I wasn't too familiar with the band Protocol, and I was really
Well, that's my pet project. That's my solo project, and we just did Protocol 4, which was we recorded in 2017. Slight change in band members. Greg Howe took over from Andy Timmons on guitar, and Dennis Ham took over from Steve Weingart on keyboards. And then for the live band, Otmaro Ruiz came in and replaced Dennis, because Dennis was already playing with Thundercat. And that album went up for a Grammy. It got nominated for a Grammy. So it's done very well. There's a live album which is out now. It's vinyl only, recorded analog. with video. There's all videos on the internet too of each song. There's another one in the can with the new band, which is Protocol 30, because that's a 30th anniversary of Protocol, really. And I'm writing music now for Protocol 5. So I hope to be in the studio next year recording it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. On the website, I noticed that there is a CD, 6 CD box set. And I look in Amazon, I look in eBay, I look at other favorite places. Nobody has the stuff, man. People are buying that like a hotcakes. You need to do another, release 2 or release 4.
Well, I did a second pressing of it.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly expensive thing to do. You know, that's a lot of 6 CDs, the printing, the manufacturing of it. It's costly. Yes, they've all sold. I think I only have 2 actually. The problem is, if I produce another 1,000, am I going to sell them all?
Yeah.
I'm going to be left with 876 sitting in my warehouse. That's the problem. So I decided, I think it's probably with the advice of my distributors, because they're smart people. They know the business and everything. So for the moment, I think we'll just have to just leave it as it is. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It was a fun package to put together. It was a lot of work. But I'm very proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I come across somewhere in the internet this week or
Yeah.
next week, whatever, I would love to send it your way and to see if you can autograph the stuff and send it
Oh, okay.
back to me.
Okay.
I like to, get
Yeah.
autographed stuff from items from people and stuff like that.
Okay.
And some of them, we will give them away on the radio. So when we broadcast the interview, we'll say, "Thank you for listening to Simon," and the first 2 callers or whatever, called 15 or caller 17, we'll give it 2 CDs for vinyl autograph.
Yeah.
By the man itself, man.
Yeah.
And I think go ahead, Christian. I think you want to go for the final questions or so. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a question. Simon is really like asking you if you mind doing an ID for the station.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just pasted on your chat. I mean, can you see that? The name of the station is AAM Radio. It's all about music. So my show there, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see For the Time Machine on AAM
Yeah.
radio.
Yeah. The name of the show is in Spanish La Máquina del Tiempo, which in English is the Time Machine. So you may include that, but the name of the station is AAM Radio. It's all about music. So you could invite the people to listen to the music and a conversation. Do whatever you want to say. It's just an invitation. A couple of versions would be fine.
Okay, so what do I say? You're listening to the Time Machine on AAM radio. It's all about music, something like that.
It's like invitation before the show goes on. Like
okay.
Yeah.
So please tune in to the Time Machine. The Time Machine is the program.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Let me try a couple. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Hello, this is Simon Phillips, and please tune in to the Time Machine on AAM radio. It's all about music.
Very, very well done.
Beautiful. Excellent.
I put my radio voice on, by the way.
Nice rhythm.
And in order to benefit you as well, Simon, where can people find your music? You have the ability on the website to buy CDs, vinyl, T-shirts.
Oh, it's available. It's distributed all over the world. It's Amazon is a very good place.
Yeah.
It's in record stores where there are record stores. It's on Universal Jazz in Japan. It's distributed by Alliance Music in the States, and but it's distributed all around the world. There's also a German record company. Forgotten the name. They didn't do the last record, but they did Protocol 2 and Protocol 3, and they have vinyls of those two. what's the name of the? Oh,
We can search for that. Never mind.
Yeah.
I've got a blank. Sorry. Probably because the last album wasn't released. I haven't actually had a lot of contact with them. They're based in Stuttgart, so they'll carry some. But it's available if you go onto the Amazon, which is worldwide. It's there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I do hope you come back to Chile someday.
I
And
would
that
love
Claudia
to.
can meet you. Yeah, maybe Claudia will meet you sometime in the US if you play there. Well, yeah.
And by the way, I got sent a picture.
Ah, yeah. That's a friend. That's a drummer. Yeah. Sorry, that is in 2004. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Juan Ricardo Baile. It's a friend of mine who's a drummer. And when you visited Channel 13 back in 2004, when you came to Viña del Mar to the festival, I think you asked him to check his drum set. He was so amazed. Yeah. He said, I mean, he might remember him the moment he said.
Yeah.
So he sends his regards.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank him for sending that picture. That's great.
Well, thank you for the time. It's been an honor, really, Simon. Really. It's like going to Wonderland. Really, you never stop. so many things to hear about. Amazing story. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. And,
thank you very much, Simon. That was our interview with Simon Phillips, and thank you very much for taking the time. I hope to meet you one day, and I'm here in Virginia, DC. So if you end up touring or if I end up going to Los Angeles, I will try to find you, and then we can get a cup of coffee or something, or a beer.
Well, let's hope we can go out and play live again soon.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Great. All right, guys. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Have a great
weekend.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.